is our theme for the year. And our guest for the day, well, let's say that out loud together. The art of abundance,
here for courage, creativity, and commitment.
And we have today with us a very committed speaker. She was with us last week, and we'll drag her back for this week. She was kicking and screaming, let me do it, let me do it. I'm kidding. Please welcome back our very own wonderful guest speaker, Reverend Robyn Plante.
Thank you. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a community of acorns. And they lived at the foot of an old oak tree. And the citizens of this community were bustling with creative energy, purposeful energy. These baby boomer acorns were involved in a lot of self-help courses. They attended seminars such as getting all you can out of your shell and who would you be without your nutty story? There were recovery groups for acorns who had been bruised in their fall from the tree. There were spas for oiling and polishing the shells. And various acornopathic therapies to enhance longevity and well-being. And one day, a naughty little stranger was dropped into their kingdom by a passing bird. And he was capless and dirty, and they found him crouched at the base of the oak tree, babbling out a wild tale. "We are that," he said, pointing up at the oak tree. "He's delusional," they said, but decided to humor him anyway. He said, "So do tell us, how do we become that tree?" "Well," the new acorn said, "it has something to do with going down in the ground and cracking open the shell." "That's insane," they said. "Totally morbid. Why, then we wouldn't be acorns anymore." So today we're talking about trusting the process of change. Endings, beginnings, and that place in between the ending and the new beginning. I invite you to consider, what is one change that has blessed you this year? What is one change that has blessed your family or friends? Can you think of at least one? Yeah. So acknowledging these blessings helps us to trust the cycle of life when change happens. And when we're invited or sometimes pushed, it feels like, into new ground. To crack open to that greater mystery of God, a greater awareness of God, of good, of growth, and the new life that awaits. I know some of you are going through that right now, aren't you? Talking to people who are moving, and Reverend Jackie Hawkins, my classmate who has just moved here from Kansas, Jackie? Let's welcome her back. Welcome, Jackie. So lots of movement going on, isn't there? And in our world too, with humanity cracking out of its smallness and nutty stories, right? In order to grow so rooted in love that all know that they are loved, appreciated, respected, and have a place in the family of humanity, the spiritual human family. We are one in that human divine family in this tree of life. So will you hold that vision with me? We are one. So I'd like to start with endings. How many of you feel that you do endings well? One person, okay. A few people, maybe, kind of, sort of, okay. You know, most of us are not taught how to do endings well, right? We're taught that if something ended, I must have did something wrong. Yeah. So we're unlearning that, because in reality, when something ends, it's usually part of a cycle, a natural life cycle of something. I remember when I was teaching high school, and I loved teaching creative writing. I loved that class, and we did so many fun things in there. And then one spring, the counselor came to me and said, "You're not teaching creative writing anymore because we're taking it off the schedule, and we're putting more college prep classes in." And I was so sad, because there's nothing I could have done to prevent it or stop it from happening. So sometimes we're part of that greater turning of the wheel of change. And we feel that in our lives, don't we? When other people or organizations make decisions, and we feel that shift. But if we're willing to look back, we can see the blessings. And I noticed it took me the next year to realize that there was a blessing in this, that I discovered that my schedule opened up so I could teach a new class with these super motivated students who loved to write creatively, so we still did that, and they loved to create. They worked on projects, they wrote plays, they presented them, and I grew as a teacher too in that. So observing nature's cycles can help us, remind us that in our lives too, every creation has its own rhythm of beginning, growth, zenith, integration, and then it subsides and completes. And there's often a period of rest before it may emerge again in a new way or in a new form. So we can learn to do endings better, to do them with grace, by appreciating the experience, by asking ourselves, what value did this add to my life? Noting that, the value the person or the situation added to your life. How did this make me a better person? What did I learn that I can bring forward? While also taking time to acknowledge feelings and perhaps mourning the loss of the good that was, that which we loved, and the role we played in that dynamic. Whether it was a job or a career, a home, a community, a role in our family that changed, a social circle, a move, a death. And I want to note too that grieving the death of a loved one has its own sacred and intricate process that deserves special consideration that I hope to talk about with you at another time. So with endings, there's some work we can do to have a better ending. And yet in our fast-paced society, we're encouraged to just move on, right? Like move on already. Do we love new beginnings? How many love a new beginning? Oh yeah, there's excitement in it, you know, although we may be nervous a little bit because, ooh, it's new, but you know, there's a tingle, there's an excitement. We feel alive. There's discovery happening within ourselves and in the group or the society or wherever we're venturing out into the newness. But there's a difference between a rushed beginning and an authentic beginning. Has anyone ever had a rushed or done a rushed beginning? Yeah. Where, you know, it's often fueled by fear. When I think about my rushed beginnings, it's the ego's afraid and we gotta do something here. But it's often reactive. And there's a rebound that happens. And often with that, we get so busy that we don't take time to reflect or appreciate or to pray for the highest good and ask for divine guidance. And when we forget to do that, what happens? There's stuff to clean up later, usually, right? So an authentic beginning comes in its own time and in its own way, usually after a period of rest and reflection, reassessment. After a time of transition, the space between the ending of one thing and the beginning of something else. So this transition time has many names. It's called the void, the hallway, a neutral zone, wilderness, desert, cocoon time. That sounds warm and fuzzy, doesn't it? It's a time when we've let go of what we know, but the new hasn't shown up yet. And it can feel disorienting, especially when control has played such a big role in our lives. You know about this, yes? Suddenly it feels like everything is out of control. And we may be like that little acorn, you know, questioning, like, where am I? Where am I? Who am I? What is my place in the world now? It can feel like a death, and it is a death of an old way of being. Like the caterpillar undergoing transformation, dissolving into unrecognizable goo. So those new butterfly cells can form the new life expression. Have you ever felt like that, where so much has fallen away that you or your life just feels like goo? Like we try to hold it and look at it, but it just like slips through. When my children were teenagers, I had a really difficult period in my life where I had a lot of endings at once. Relationship ended that I thought would be a happily ever after. I was laid off from my job. I suddenly had panic attacks, which I'd never had before at all. And my kids went to go live with their dad. So I could, figure out this health challenge thing. And I remember being at a high school track and walking around the track and just feeling so sad, like I had lost so much. And I remember talking to God and just saying, what else can be taken? Is there anything that can't be taken from me? I really wanted to know. So I walked for a while, and the answer came, yes, your faith. Your faith can never be taken. No one and no thing can take your faith. So we can trust the process of change, knowing that God is in the goo on the way to good. I think that could be a song. God is in the way on, God is in the goo on the way to good.
Give me a couple weeks.
Okay. So what we're really trusting here is divine order, right? Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, says this: order is the first law of the universe. Indeed, there could be no universe unless its various parts were kept in perfect order. The facts of spirit are of spiritual character, meaning we often can't discern them with our intellectual faculty. We need to go to prayer, go to meditation to discern the spiritual movement in our lives. The facts of spirit are of spiritual character, and when understood in their right relation, are orderly. So that's where we surrender our will, our mind, trying to figure it out. We surrender to the one mind that knows. So these times of change put us face to face with our spiritual character. What do we believe? And how do we put our beliefs into action and let our faith be strengthened? We're challenged to trust a higher order at work, even when we can't see it. Some call this time the dark night of the soul, which to the ego feels like the dark night of the personality that goes kicking and screaming on the way to transformation. But the soul can never be lost. So if you're going through a time right now, know that you are not lost. You are being guided to your next new divine expression. Father Thomas Keating said, a dark night is really like the night sky in Colorado, filled with stars. So we are not alone. We are never alone, whatever we're going through. So this cocoon state is actually a very rich time if we give ourselves permission to just be in it for as long as it takes. So there's the rub, isn't it? Like, okay, I'll be in it for 5 minutes. What? Another day? Another day? Another day? I like to call this place the magical place in between the ending and the beginning. And it's magical because in this place, all possibilities exist, and yet none have been chosen yet. So we can try on all those possibilities. Because a new beginning, when we make a choice and have a new beginning, that will require some new commitments. This can be a time of really dropping in and listening. It's a good time to keep a journal too, if you haven't started that yet. How many of you keep a journal now? It's a good tool to dialogue with your inner self. So we take time to attend to what one writer calls the secret velvet of your heart. Taking time to listen to your life. And this is not listening to your thoughts about your life, but really listening to that life of God within you. What does it want to do? Where does it want to go? Is there an old nutty story that is begging to be let go? In this time, we can notice the threads of our lives to give us a clue to what's next in our authentic new beginning. And in our authentic new beginning, it may look very different than what we think it would look like or what we even imagined. We also remember that our new beginning is not just for us, but for the good of all. Because God is always working in us for greater good, not just for us, but for all. Jesus reminds us that our spiritual growth, like all of God's creations, is rooted in order. First the blade, then the ear, and after that the full corn in the ear. The seed that is to grow must lose itself as seed. And to grow, when we're in these periods of growth, we're often charged with facing our deepest fear and knowing our deepest love. And to know that God in us is indestructible. God in you is indestructible. These times of change help us to really, really own that. So to anchor that in, I'd like us to close with affirming together the power of divine order in our lives, and we'll say these together. And we talked about last week self-compassion and how that warm touch when you're affirming putting a hand on your arm or a hand on your heart lets the body know it can relax into this truth. Together, divine order is at work in every area of my life. Divine order is at work in my body and health. Divine order is at work in my finances and relationships. Divine order is at work in this community and in our world. Divine order is at work in every area of my life. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Look at the gooey stick. The gooey stick. There, there.